Hey,
Mm.
folks, it's Hank, and we're going to hang again. There's another Hanging
Okay.
with Hank, and I have a friend of mine to talk with and for you all to hear about, and it's my friend Deborah Mitchell. She's a dancer,
Mm.
choreographer, teacher,
Ooh.
founder, and artistic director of New Jersey Tap Ensemble, and all around good person. We used to be neighbors almost in Bloomfield, New Jersey. We'll
That's
talk about it
right.
in a minute. So hey, Deborah,
How
how
are
you
you,
doing?
Hank? I'm
I'm
so
good.
excited about
I
being
know.
here today. You've done such beautiful hangings. I said, to be hanging with you is a real privilege. I said, all right, this is my time. Okay.
I got this idea thinking I got this unique phrase, hanging with Hank, right? And then to put
It's,
it up. You mean
I
there's
think
another,
it's,
there's a few other hanging with Hanks, there's other people named Hank out there? So
no, no,
it's
no, no.
like,
You should
it's all,
copyright this. This is perfect for you. And it's
you know,
so, it's so catchy, but really, it's just such, I feel so privileged. I said, oh, and I've been following them, because I know my friends, LD and Evan, and of course Germaine and Germaine Ingram. I said, oh my goodness, I think I'm number 5 or something.
yeah, I think you're. Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, number actually, because I'm starting with a lot of tap dances, but I'm branching out,
Yeah.
so there'll
Okay.
be other people too in it.
I'm
But
sure.
and it's just a great thing, and just getting to know. And what I love about it too is the people I know, but I get to know them even more
I know.
in the hang, and
Well,
you know,
you're right, because I'm gonna tell you now, as much as I feel like I know the people that you've been talking to, I find I learn so much more. You know what I mean? It's really, and even with my partner Germaine, I mean, we've been together, it's for many years, and there were things I learned, from hanging with her hanging with you. So I say, it's really a fun thing, and it's such a great historic thing too, because once it's recorded, it just it's important, to have these things. So many things were not documented
yeah.
by the people who even taught me, and who were important in my life. So it's good, you feel like it'll be there for generations, so it sounds like, oh my God, but man, you're doing things while we're still here.
Yeah. And it's interesting as I do, well, it's interesting the time we're living in. And I've had
Mm,
a variation of this conversation with all of my guests in terms of, as I look through stuff that I have and research, and part of me goes, where did the time go?
I
It's like,
know.
holy mackerel. Like, I'm looking at this stuff and, I don't know about you, but a lot of memories of Cookie Buster, Marion are
Oh,
still
I
like
have.
fresh in my mind though. And then I,
Yeah,
then I
it's
look at
like
stuff going,
yesterday.
oh, this is 30, 40 something years ago.
I
And then you
know.
kind of realize these people who were kids, they're not kids. They're
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
growing up
Hmm.
and doing stuff. So it's an interesting
Yes.
thing
Yes.
to be this, you do this thing.
And
But,
they're precious memories. They are so precious.
oh,
I think now, when I pass, if I'm in New York and go past where Fazels used to be, and places of that nature where, I literally can still, the smell and sound of the place, I still have it in my head. You know what I mean?
and
Because
just so people know, tell people what phasals is. Because every now and then,
Fazels,
just to
right?
clarify, because there's non-tap dancers watching this too.
The Bezos was where everybody who had prayer tap shoes at some point was working out, and you'd go up those stairs,
Scary
like
stairs.
going up forever. And it was but it had little rooms. You could hear belly dancing, you could hear tap shoes, you could hear, and that's where I did. Oh my God. That Bubba took me there. That's why I had so many lessons with him. That's where we used to go. It was like we're going up to Fazels
Mm.
and work out, and then of course, then after Fazels, he would take me to the showman's lounge and put me on a stool
Oh,
and tell me,
really?
yeah, and then he
Wow.
went in. Of course, everybody around me was drinking, but he would give me a little ginger ale, and he would tell me stories about his life as an artist. And I mean, sometimes he would tell them 2 and 3 times, and I'd act like it's the first time I heard it,
Wow.
but that was kind of a routine. And I'll talk more about him, but he was such a walker. He could walk. This man, you talk about walking, he could walk from Fazels up to Harlem, and we're talking about a long way. And he
Wow.
thought nothing of it, because I'll never forget. Sometimes I say, "Okay, well, we can take the train," or if I'm driving, he said, "Oh, no problem, we can walk." And I was
Wow.
thinking, and I'm thinking, walk, you know.
Well,
So and
we
he loved walking,
we're
and
gonna find
telling
out.
stories.
Yeah, we're gonna find out more about Bubba for those of you watching
Yeah,
who wonder, "Wait, who's this person, Bubba?" So,
yeah.
but anyway, so how did it begin for you? Like, actually, because one of the things I don't know is where did you grow up?
Yes.
Where does
I'm
it
a
start?
Midwestern girl. My childhood was in St. Louis, Missouri,
Mm,
and that's where I was born and raised. And even recently, when I was doing an oral history, I did a little research myself and I realized that I was born in Homer G. Phillips Hospital, which was the only hospital where African Americans could have service in St. Louis at that time. So
mm,
it was today it's torn down, but I said I didn't realize that, because I had such sweet parents and such beautiful people who loved me so much. I'm one of it's four girls, okay?
mm-hmm,
I'm the second oldest, and there's two younger than I am. So I have an older sister who's still in St. Louis, and one of my younger sisters is still there. And so, but my other sister Daphne is here in New York. So my oldest sister Pat, who's an educator and has had a long career in that, and is so highly respected in St. Louis. She's the oldest of the family, and then there's
mm-hmm,
Pam, who is after me, who is also an educator, and then there's Daphne, who's in marketing and in really, really public relations, that kind of thing in New York. So it was four of us all together. I used to laugh because I used to say to my dad, I say, didn't you want a boy in the family? So he said, I had one. And I looked at him, he said, it was you. Because I was such a tomboy. I loved everything. I love sports, I was one of those girls that loved being outside. I would try all kinds of things. And he taught me I love football to this day. And my father taught me. He taught me all the great things. He loved the Green Bay Packers. That's the first time I heard the name Vince Lombardi.
mm,
So I had a very rich childhood, and even though I grew up in the 50s, I can honestly say that my parents were so I didn't know how much they sheltered us, because we were so loved, and we never wanted for anything. I'd be saying,
mm,
"Oh, I had such a poor childhood." Christmas and any day of the week, all of that it was wonderful for us. And the one thing my parents really, really stressed, mom and dad, was education.
mm,
So as I grew up, that was the important thing. And I have to say, that's really how um, my mom, at that time, they called them housewives or homemakers. My dad basically went out, to do work. And he was one of the first African Americans to graduate from St. Louis University. My father had,
mm,
I tell people, I didn't realize it until I was almost an adult how brilliant my father was, because
mm.
he had a degree in accounting. And listen, I didn't get any of that DNA. Me and figures, I typically do not go together, but he helped to establish the computers for McDonnell Douglas. All these things, I was just amazed. Later in life, you learn about your parents, but in the meantime, but at home, it was warm, it was loving. My mom was the one who put me in dance school at a very young age, because she used to laugh. She said, "This baby," she said, even when she carried me, it was always motion going on. She said, she said she could just feel it all the time. She said, "This baby," and she used an expression that I'm sure some people young people won't know, but some older people who might watch will say, my mother would say she needed a ball and a chain to keep up with me, because I was
Mm.
that busy all the
Wow.
time. So, I have scars to this day. There's one right about here. You can't probably see it,
Mm,
where I fell out of my crib, and at that time, baby bottles were glass. So I fell out of the crib and hit my head on it. She rushed me to the one hospital she could get to, Homer G. Phillips. They sewed it up, blah 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 blah.
mm-hmm,
She brought me back home. She said I was all smiles. She said I was happy. She said she put me back down. She said she put me in a chair. It was a little rocking chair. She said, you flipped over in the rocking chair, opened the wound, back up again. She said, always moving, always in motion. So
Wow.
when I got to be about 7 years old or so, that's when she said she decided, okay, she would put my older sister, she put my older sister Pat into ballet, and she put me in tap. She said, this one will never stand still at a bar. So I'm gonna put her, she says, forget it. She said, I knew right then. But the funny thing about it, even though it wasn't overly exposed, I was in this school, I can't remember, Miss Les Perretz or something. I have a picture, I have that actual picture on my wall that I look at it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But in the school, my mom said, which tells me how much she was ahead of her time, she said that she took me out after she realized that this is not when Black was beautiful. So every time I was doing something, she said, I seemed to get pushed to the back. And she felt that she would always, the instructor was always pushing the fair-skinned girls or the white girls to the front.
Wow.
So she said it hurt her to see that, even though I was happy, she didn't appreciate it. So she took me out. But now we had this big argument because after she took me out, I wanted to go back, and she took the tap shoes also. She just said, we'll do this later. So she put the tap shoes into a closet. Okay.
Yeah.
And she said, what she didn't realize was how deep it went with me, because one afternoon she heard all this noise and she said, what is going on? Well, I had found the tap shoes in the closet, and I had put them on. I put them on in the dark, and I was tapping in the closet.
In the closet.
In the closet. She said, this baby, she said, girl, she said, so she sat me down and told me, she said, look, you can always go back to this, and we're going to get it educated. We're going to school. Don't worry about the shoes. But it was so funny. She said, no, so when people ask me about tap shoes, I laugh. I say, I've always had them on or somewhere. Even as a little girl at 7, I had them in the closet. Okay. So,
Wow.
but the St. Louis was, I had a wonderful childhood. I really did. Between Pat, Pam, and Daphne, the 4 of us, we loved one another. We were very close, and all of us went, all of us, it was my parents insisted on it. All of us went to college. It was important. And my mom used to say, she was very, very, like I said, ahead of her time. She said, I don't mind what you do later, but I want you to get an education so that you can always be independent and be on your own and do for yourself. And that was important to both of them, So they were my best teachers. They gave me really, really good. I'm rooted, in a very stable way. Like I said, I never ever felt like I wanted for anything, but those basic things, how you treat people, being proud of yourself, always being prideful. I had that from the time I was a child,
And it pays off.
It really does.
Yeah,
it really does. In fact, I have to say, I think after fast forward a little bit, I ended up going to after I got out of high school, I went to Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, Illinois. Right. And believe it or not, I had a scholarship, and that's when I was a freshman. And that's when I first came in contact with the great Walt Frazier. He was a senior and getting ready. Right. And I used to work.
Clyde.
That's what they called. And I always worked, even though I had a partial scholarship. Because at that time, for your parents to let you go away to college, you had housing and books and all that.
Yeah.
So I was always very someone who always worked hard. So I had partial scholarships. I worked at the athletic department, naturally, because I love athletics. I worked there, and I had a part-time job also with the few. Now, Southern Illinois, what I liked about the school is that it was very diverse. But even then, the Black girls who were on campus didn't have cosmetics or different type of accessories and things that we needed for our hair and different things of that nature. Well, my mother always did my hair when I was a little girl, so I knew how to do my own. So the girls who were there who didn't have, like we had little straightening combs and we would put little creams on our hair. I knew how to do mine. Many of them didn't have access to it. So I started I had me a little job on Saturday mornings
Really?
where
Wow.
for the girls of color would come to me and I would, I would do it for free, but they said, no, we'll pay you. We'll pay
Hmm.
you. They would pay me $2. And I would do hair, for some of the girls,
Wow.
so,
Wow.
but I always wanted to, and they had I'll never forget, in the dorm where I lived, they had a rule that you couldn't have any kind of appliance. And I went to the board and told them, I said,
Mm.
but you have to understand that we need to have certain things for our hair to get our hair done. We need like a little hot plate. So I considered it important that we be able to plug those things in because I didn't want you to plug anything in. So had to do my civil rights kind of things
Yeah,
early in
yeah.
life. But it was important, that we had ability to do that. I don't want to have to hide it. I want them to know this is part of our culture.
And
And
that's
what we
interesting. This kind of story is one of the different kind of stories about our story, black people, in terms of,
That's right.
we have the big stories, but these little things like this little something, something, and that's significant, you know,
Very, very
and
much.
to the point where you have to, champion, no, we need to have these things plugged in because
That's
of
right. Or
this
exactly.
something. Yeah, that's
And I was
fascinating.
very
Wow.
proud of that. And then with the little funds they would give me, I would buy a few little supplies downtown,
Hmm.
over the drugstore, and I'd have them. And it just we and young girls got to know. They said, oh gee, well, make an appointment with Debbie. She'll do your hair. So, but it was all about us having what we needed. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
We
yeah.
had, I took great pride in that, and it was, and if they didn't have any money, I didn't care. I did it anyway. It was a way
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
giving back, and it was for us. But I had, like I said, I always, was industrious. I would work for what I wanted. I always went after. That's something I got from my parents too. If you want something, go after it. Don't always look at it as if you can attain it. You know what I mean? Don't. I think that has, and I know, I can't say I think, I know that has stayed with me all my
Oh
life.
yeah, you've done that. Yeah, yeah.
Anything I've ever wanted, I'm not, I was used to, okay, obstacles didn't mean anything to me. You know what I mean? I would try it, and then if that was one of my mother's favorite expressions. She said, try it. And believe it or not, that's something I heard from Bubba a little bit later. I'll tell you about that.
Mm.
But she used to say, well, try. And if it doesn't, they never ever though were the
Wow.
kind of parents they push you as if as to say you had to always be excellent in everything. My mother used to always say, I don't care if you don't get straight A's, because we were doing a time where it was always stressed, that if you were black you had to be
You had
better,
to be better.
always better.
Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
had to
And
excel.
that can become a burden.
Yes, yes. And that's what my mom did not want to happen. She would say, look, if you bring me an A, that was the best you could do, that's fine. If you bring me a C or D, if that really was your best, I'm okay with that too. And we'll work on getting better at those things. But it wasn't like you must do. She said, all I want is your best. Okay. And that was, and I'll never forget one of the biggest, one of the biggest lessons I learned was I was always a child who had a strong mind. And my mother used to say she never worried much about me. She said, because you've always had what she called, strength. So
Hmm.
I'll never forget, I got in trouble one afternoon with some little girl. I don't forget what we were doing in the neighborhood, but we did something, and oh, my mother heard about it, and she said, when I got home, and they were the kind of parents who knew what you were doing. So my mom, I got home, my mom said, now tell me, why did you do that? Something I did in one of the stores or something. Why did you do
Yeah.
that? And so I'm sitting there, and she said, I'm going to ask you again, why did you do that? And I said, because she made me. This little girl who was with me. I said, she made me. My mother said, you know what? You're going to get a beating, not because she made you. It's because you lied to me. Nobody makes you do anything. She said, I
Mm.
know that about you. She said, you're one of the strongest people I know. She said, and that's what's upsetting to me. That not that you did it, but that you lied to me. Never tell a lie. She said, it will always come back to haunt you. She said, I don't care how bad it is. But she said, and to say she made you, she said, I know you. So from the time I brought you in the world,
Nobody
nobody.
makes you.
She said, maybe one of your sisters or somebody, but you, no. She said, I know you. Nobody makes Deborah do anything she doesn't want to do. So, and she really didn't beat me, thank God.
Yeah,
but
but you got the point.
I got right, exactly. So
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
that's why she really knew me well, and she said you have, and she used to say that that was one of the reasons why she didn't mind. I was the first child in the family to go away to school,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and she said, how some parents are afraid to let a child go out into the
Mm-hmm.
world. She said, not you. She said, I wasn't. She said, I hated it made me sad to see you go because we loved you, but not because I was afraid that you couldn't handle yourself.
She knew
She
you'd
said
be
that
okay.
was not. She said
Yeah,
I was sure that if
yeah.
you went away, she said in fact you needed to go away. She said I
Mm.
wanted you to get out in the world, and that's why Southern Illinois still has a very special place in my heart because it was so diverse. I met people from all over the world, and I tell people sometime today, one of the best things about college is not about what you learn in the books, but how to be around other people. Because there were in the dorm where I lived, which was at that time all girls, okay, in the all girls dorm called Neely Hall. I loved it. I was on the 8th floor, all the way up at the top, and there were people there from every country in that school. So you learn how to, you get out of your bubble, and be around other people. So those are great, great experiences for me, and I loved it. But my master's degree, though, was from Indiana University in social work. So now I didn't bother with dance at all while I was in college because I knew that it was important for me to get this degree, and I wanted to have something I could hang my hat on, as they say. So um, my master. In fact, a lot of people don't realize it, but almost for 4 years in college, Hank, I was a French major because I wanted to be an interpreter at the UN.
Mm.
So I was studying French. I could read it, write it, and speak it very well. And there was a family in Paris that had been picked out for me to go as an exchange student. But my mother, here's what she was a little bit nervous about my going overseas. And she said, I don't really want you that far away. She said, it didn't sit well with her. So would you believe it? In my junior year, I had to change my major because to fulfill at being a French major, you would have had to gone overseas
Mm-hmm.
and learn and worked. And also, it's not so bad because I found out that one of my French teachers said to me, well, I know you're heartbroken about this because she set up the family. She said, but the bottom line is that at the UN, they're going to take people who are, that's their native tongue anyway. And
Mm.
they rarely will do the opposite, take someone who is an American who speaks French and put them at the embassies and all that. She said they're going to go the opposite way. It's going to be somebody who knows the dialects and knows all the
And
nuances,
yeah, the slang and all everything. Yeah.
all that. So, but to tell you the truth, as much as I love the language, it did me well because I could speak it when I got to Paris for Black and Blue. So
Mm.
I could get up in the mornings and go places and speak. I loved it. So I ended up
Wow.
using it anyway. But anyhow, I did get my master's at Indiana University. I had a full scholarship, and that was great because then I didn't have to work myself to death. But I had I didn't have to have 10 jobs. But my master's degree is in social work. I got that in 75, and the only stipulation that was connected to my going to Indiana was that it was funded through what was called the United States Children's Bureau. And the only little stipulation they had was once you got your master's, you had to spend 2 years serving children in some capacity. And that was no problem, because when I realized how much I wanted to get to New York, when I got to New York, before I went into the theater, I actually worked as on a child study team, where they actually had a psychologist, an educator, and a social worker place children in special schools like Gallaudet in Washington, D.C., and in special classes. And even then, I was a little bit concerned with that job, because to me, they were often children were labeled as ED, emotionally disturbed, or they weren't emotionally disturbed. They just needed someone to discipline them.
So this is some organization that you worked at?
Well, I worked in a school. I worked in
Oh,
a
in a
school
school. Okay.
in Carteret, New Jersey, of all places. Okay,
Wow.
Carteret, exactly. I lived in
I'm
Newark.
always getting
Okay.
deliveries from Amazon, Carteret, New Jersey. That's the only
Carteret,
reason I know it. Your package is
Carteret,
in Carteret. Okay.
but I was in a school, and it was called the Child Study Team. And that's where children, they would bring in, say, a family where the child was, quote, acting out, and they would test them psychologically, educationally. And then, of course, someone had to go to the home or speak to the parents about what the child's environment was. And so that was my job. And some of them were disabled, hearing impaired. Some had speech impediments, and some were just plain old wanting attention,
Yeah.
But I laugh because, even though my master's was in social work, I use that to this day, because
Yeah.
and I specialized, Hank, in what they call group work. Well, how many groups are you in your lifetime? Almost everything you do is with a group of some sort, starting with your family. You know what I mean?
And
So
then dealing with the group dynamics. So.
group dynamics, who's the leader in the group,
Right.
who's
Yeah.
the this,
Who's
who's
the
the
follow?
that.
Who's the, yeah.
Right. And you can be sure with an ensemble and when
Oh,
working with
you can talk about that. Yeah. Wow.
if you're in a show, you got plenty of groups there,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
But what's good is that I've always been, I'm grateful that education and being on my own was important to my parents and my mom. I look back how bright she was in knowing how to steer each one of us. I'm the only one who's in performing arts, in the family, but it just goes to show me, that, like I said, those roots are so embedded, and look at how valuable they were, because they stay with you. I've gone after what I wanted, and that was important. So I use, people say, you went to school and got a master's degree. Did you ever use it? I have certainly used it. I use it professionally, and I use it all the time to this day, because and with so much going on in the times that we're living today, you can be sure with people talk about mental health. I've dealt with
Yeah.
that for many,
Yeah.
I've had some of the tools to work with that. You know what I mean? And I've always known that our mental health is as important as physical.
And the interesting thing is, I taught Bloomfield season TV production and all this, that, or whatever. But one of the things I'll tell the students, you need to know about a lot of different things when you're going to be creative.
You really do.
And I say some of the most outstanding, whether they're actors, directors, whatever. A lot of these people didn't necessarily study that. They were studying. I was in architecture. I was in pre-engineering, whatever.
Right.
Talking to Germaine, same thing. So you study these other things, and if you do wind up in the arts, which is about people, which
Right.
is about interacting, those things come in handy.
Oh, you better believe it.
And particularly, so it's really interesting. We know those different things. It really,
yes.
it's not like, oh, you got a major in this, like you say, and you never use it. No, it kicks in, or like you say, you over in France, black and blue. So
right.
That's what's so fascinating about these journeys and doing that.
I know.
How does it come together?
Yeah. Well, I was in English when I was studying French. My minor was English. Okay. So believe it or not, when I have written so many grants, and I can tell you now that all of that training in English and writing, all those writing skills that I had to use in college, I've used them 10 times in writing grants, or
and that's an art form, writing grants. That's why people pay other people to do that. because that's a gig.
That's right. You better believe it. And I want, people say, oh, yeah, you have to get a grant writer. Well, we couldn't afford any grant writers. So guess who was the grant writer? I
Yeah.
was, and I learned how, but also all those opportunities I had when I was in college, when I had to write as an English minor,
Yeah.
all that kicked in, so all those things, they overlap, and even to this day, when people will be doing things and I'll say, well, let me learn how to do that. People say, well, you don't need that. I say, I don't know what I'm gonna need before I leave this earth. So I'm gonna learn everything, everything I can.
Well, it's
And that's
funny.
why even today with computers, there's so many people. Oh, I can't be bothered with the computers. That's too much. I'm bothered with them because I want to know how to do it.
Also, we're at the point because I talk about, I love learning stuff. I like being being a student, and part of it, we're at that point where we need to keep learning new things to
Keep the
this
mind.
keep it working. That's because that's the
Exactly.
thing with people, other than things that happen. But this idea when you lose interest in different things, or
Oh,
you're not,
sure.
you slow up or whatever. So learning something new and looking into it and going, show me that. And so
Well,
you
not only,
go
yeah,
ahead.
that, yeah, well, I was gonna say not only that, as you age, and then dance, I've been doing it a long time. I don't dance at the level that I did, obviously, when I was performing
Hmm.
a lot, but you need to be involved, and like you say, and one thing about the computers and things, I enjoy, that I can do technical things that a lot of my peers are not doing, but I enjoy learning how to do it. When I met you, that fascinated me that anybody could take something and edit it and fix it. I mean, it wasn't like let them do it. I said, well, how you do that? So and it'll
Yeah,
take me hours today to do some things that'll take you 10 minutes, I'm sure. But the
yeah.
point is, it's I live in a community, a retirement community to this day, and people say to me, how do you know how to do all that? I said, well, first of all, I'm around a lot of youth, and that keeps, I said, and I can't afford, and first of all, I don't want to not know, but I also can't afford to know, otherwise you become a dinosaur and you
Yeah,
have to learn, learning new things. I'm always up to the challenge, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
it is important, so
So anyway, you've gone to college and you've done this thing, and
yeah.
somehow, one way or another, you wind up to New York. How does the shift happen to become a
Well,
performer and get
I'm
into tap? And I know there's the
yeah,
famous story about you and Bubba
but
Gaines, who we'll talk
even
about. But anyway,
even
what point did I want to
well,
perform, or
well, let me
how
tell
did that
well,
drop on you
well, here's
as
what
an
happened.
adult? New York.
Here's
Go
what
ahead.
happened to me now. I'm in Newark. I was working, with the child, and I knew in my heart, even though I was working with the child study team, I wanted to get back to dance. It was always just like the kid in the closet. It was always, lurking.
Lurking around. I was about to say that, lurking around. Hey, Debbie. Hey, hey, Debbie.
So someone very dear to me got me a pair of tap shoes, but said to me, if you're really interested in tap, you should go see this man named Henry Latang.
Mm,
So then I said, well, I never heard of him. I said, well, he's in New York. Well, I was living in Newark that had in an apartment building that had a bus out front that took everybody into New York every day,
that's great.
on a certain schedule. So I thought, well, maybe okay. So first I said, well, let me see. And Mr. Latang's studio was on 50 54th or 57th. I don't remember exact place upstairs. But anyway, it was on a second floor. And I think it was 57th Street. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
But I thought, okay, all right, I'm gonna go. So and even when I got my first tap shoes, and they were little pumps. They weren't like today. A lot of the girls get these were little pumps. Okay, and I thought, oh gee. So I found out where the place was. Like I said, I'm always going after it. But I drove over that day because I said, well, I'm gonna take my car in case I don't get lost or something. So I drove over and I saw the studio where the studio was located. And like I said, it was up these stairs. Well, Hank, this is something very few people know, but I always love when I think about it. You had to, I don't know how many studios we go to, and they always seem to have stairs. But I was at the foot of the stairs, and you had to climb up a good four, maybe four, like four set of stairs to get to the top. But at the top, you could hear the piano being played, and you could hear the tapping.
Mm.
Okay, so I said, "Oh." So I put my first foot on the bottom rung of the stairs, and by the time I did the second step, tears came to my eyes because it was a sound that I hadn't heard in a long time, that stayed with me, that meant so much to me, that I literally was paralyzed. I couldn't move. I was so excited. And it hit a chord in me that I knew that was where I was supposed to be going. So I collected myself and I got up to the top of the stairs. And when you opened, of course, the door, you saw the girls in their little leotards, and then these are young people like in their early 20s, and like everybody is tapping, and the piano is being played, and the piano is being played by Mr. Latang, because he used to sit at that piano and play these chords. So the woman at the desk, I didn't know. Later on, I find out, of course, that this is Ellie Latang, his wife. And that was when I said I wanted to take classes, and she wanted. Did I have it? No, I had when I was a little girl, but I wanted to get started. Make a long story short, Mr. Latang came out, and he said, "Come on in this other room," because he was like that. He would, if you really wanted to dance, he would take you into the room, play a few chords, and see just exactly where you were. Okay. Well, I hadn't had on shoes in a long time, so I put them on, but I love to dance. So I, at that time, not knowing, I had a little bit of jazz in there, and I was never a trained dancer. This is something that was just kind of more or less in me. So, because I had never, that the only dance school I had been to was the one that my mother took me out of. So you see how far back that goes. So I had
Yeah.
no formal training. So Mr. Latang, after playing a few chords, he said, "I want you to come back." He said, "I'm gonna put you in class, but I also want to put you with a man named Frank Hatchett." Okay, so right. So he said, "There's a lot you need, but you've got it. But you need, we got to get you really to understand what you're doing." So that was my beginning of going to Henry's classes all the time. And he and Ellie would leave some evenings, and I loved it so much. They got to a point where they would lock me in, and they say, "When you finish, shut out the light, Debbie, and go home." So
Really? Wow.
they would leave, but they'd lock the door on their way out. And of course, all I had to do was close it, and it was locked, and I'd go home. So I would stay in the studio and do my, one night, a guy came upstairs and he said, is Henry here?" And I said, "No, he's not. Who are you?" He said, "Oh, I'm Nipsey." It was Nipsey Russell. Okay. He said, "What are you doing here?"
Wow. Wow.
So he said, "Oh, he said, let me show you a few steps on Nipsey Russell."
At the time, you knew who he was?
Not really.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
not really. So I said, "Okay, but he was Nipsey Russell." So he said, "Well, okay, I'm gonna go. I'll just close the door."
Wow.
But when later on, I told Henry, I said, "This man Nipsey." He said, "Nipsey Russell."
Wow.
But those kind of part of my journey has been rich. But what was even nicer, here's where things, it's funny how they happen. For a couple of years, I would say a couple of years, I was just taking classes. I was just going into New York taking classes, and I started taking them with one of one of his great teachers was Eleanor Harris. Okay, so
Yeah. Wow.
Eleanor Harris was there. But in the meantime, the craziest thing happened to me. Don't forget, I'm in Newark. There was an audition that came up with a man by the name of Alex Bradford. Now, Alex Bradford
I
was a
know that
great
name.
gospel. He was a great gospel singer and composer.
Mm.
He was behind Arms Too Short to Box with God.
Mm.
Okay, yes,
Wow.
and Don't Bother Me, I Can't
Yeah,
Cope.
Cope. Yeah, Mickey
Okay,
Grant.
okay, right, with Mickey Grant, and okay, so I
Wow.
heard there was an audition for something. I didn't know this, but he had I think Arms Too Short had closed, and he was starting his own young theater company in Newark. Okay, but so he had an audition open, and I thought, oh, I'll take my tap shoes. Maybe it's something that I can do. I didn't know he was really into just into gospel singing. Well, to make a long story short, there was a theater in the South Ward of Newark. I took my tap shoes one afternoon, and I met him there. So he said, well, we don't need tap shoes for what I'm doing. He was doing a piece called Don't Cry Mary, or What's a Friend For? And he was getting ready to do Black Nativity, another version of Black Nativity. So I went there, and he said, well, put your tap shoes down. This production doesn't need any tap. But I had fallen in love with the theater. So because I had seen I Can't, Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope. So I thought, and I had, the very first thing I saw in New York, of course, was Jesus Christ Superstar with Ben Vereen. So,
Wow.
right. So I said, well, I love the theater. So I thought, well, any kind of way I can get in it, I'm going. So he said he was looking for a young woman to play the role of Mary in Black Nativity. I ended up getting that part and joining Creative Movement. So now I'm not tapping anymore for a while. So from about 77 to 79, I'm really working with Alex, and he was getting ready to go to the Walnut Street Theater in Philadelphia to mount this production. So we get there. We ended up doing. We did Black Nativity at downtown. What was the name of that place? It was called Urban Arts Corps.
Oh yeah, Vinette Carroll, right?
Vinette Carroll,
Yeah, Vinette
right,
Carroll. Wow.
right. Okay, so I ended up going to a remake of Black Nativity with the Urban Arts Corps, and I played the role of Mary. I did that for a while. Then he was getting ready for this new piece called What's a Friend For? Or Don't Cry Mary, and I was going to play Mary's alter ego. I'm doing none of this has anything to do with tap. He brought over a young man from the Dance Theater of Harlem to give me some basics in lyrical and movement that he wanted to use in this piece. So I'm getting a little bit of this, a little bit of that. All right. I loved it. But unfortunately, in let me see, when did he do? 1978, Alex died from a stroke. He was and he was just getting ready to mount this piece that we were all in love with doing. It probably would have been a next great Broadway show he was working on, but he passed away. And like, unfortunately, with some great leaders and who are so dynamic, the creative movement, the company that I was with, which had some phenomenal singers, it just didn't hold together. So I went back. I said, you know what? I'm gonna put my shoes back on and go back. And that's when I went back to Clark Center.
Clark Center.
And Clark Center. And that's where I met.
There we go. Wow.
Here we go. And that's where Eleanor Harris was. And that's where the one of the great loves of dance for me. That's where Pepsi Bethel was. And that's
Selma Hill.
And Charles Moore.
Charles Moore. Wow.
He was the first. Listen, I
didn't realize you were a Clark Center babe. Wow.
I was at Clark Center. That's right. Because once Alex died, I knew that they tried to keep things going. It wasn't working. And I said, I'll put my shoes back on and go back into. So I decided then I was going to study tap completely. Okay. And that's where I was going to go. So it was, my goodness, 77 to 79. Oh, and I loved Clark Center. That's where I met Fred. What's his name? Benjamin?
Fred Benjamin. The guys came over from Brazil. And
all these beautiful people.
Wow. And Louise Roberts running the whole thing. Louise Roberts.
And what's her name? Charles Moore's wife. I met
Is it Ella Moore? Ella Moore, yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, I love these people. They gave me.
I didn't realize you had been. Yeah, that place. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And they were, and like I said, I had never had dance training, but I loved it. And now, of course, I'm an adult. You hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I started dancing when I was a little girl." This is not true for me. I was in tap for a couple of years as a little girl, then nothing for almost 20 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and then, but listen, Charles Moore was so phenomenal that, I started to really appreciate my body and
Yeah,
how,
he had such a body, such a way of moving. When he
oh,
did that ostrich dance,
that's
after
right.
the dance, I remember I saw that at the Delacorte. We used to do that dance festival, and I
Yeah.
remember when he made his entrance, I
Oh,
saw a bird.
yes, you
I
did.
did not. I mean, and I freaked. I mean, we have certain performance experiences that just take you. When he came up, and it wasn't like an intellectual thing. It was like, this is a creep.
I
By the
know.
way, those of you who know who we're talking about, look him up, Charles Moore. Asodata the Fora, the ostrich dance. I mean,
And
yeah,
he
oh
was
yeah.
and he, what, and he was so sweet, and he was so loving and oh, I had never seen anybody move like that. I went to the Brooklyn Academy of Music and saw him do the ostrich, do the I
At that
told
big
people,
festival they had there, the
I
black
know, I
dancing.
told people,
Yeah,
I said, you should see, I've never seen anything like this in my life. It was unbelievable.
no.
And I say to this day, had I not really, I was so in love with tap. Had I not been in tap the way I was, I probably would have been African dance because of Charles Moore. Because he
Mm,
was the man was, and he was a phenomenal teacher. He was
mm.
good to his students. He knew, oh, but and that's when I fell in love with the theater completely. I was just, you couldn't get me out of it. I didn't care. I would work any place, but I would, every time I got the chance, I would say 4 out of 7 days I was in at Clark Center or someplace,
And
doing.
also that time was so interesting. The '70s, in terms of
Yes, yes.
mid '70s to late '70s, a
Woo,
combination of this dance explosion that happened all of a sudden. It was downtown. There was all these dance, and it was economically feasible to not have a
yes,
lot of money and see a lot of stuff. And
I
and and
know.
and the whole joke. I was talking to a friend of mine. She talked back in those days. You went to one class to another. You had your orange juice with you. You went downstairs, got this.
That's
You
right.
headed to the
That's
next
right.
class. Then there's going to be a performance, or then you find out
Oh,
about an audition. I mean, it was just all swirling around,
I
and
know.
you're around people, some of who you appreciated, and now you realize some legends who were teaching you.
I know.
Thelma
I
Hill, Pepsi Bethel, whatever, and Clark Center was just so that time.
yes,
And
yes.
those of us still around from that embody that.
I
Because
know.
that's
It
another
was
part of the foundation that
so
I would dare say doesn't exist in the same way anymore.
no,
In
it does
terms of
not. It
you know
doesn't.
because the
No.
combination of all those cultural things, because
Hmm,
the
hmm.
African, like I said, the African and some of from inner
Oh,
city of Harlem coming you, and then that's what comes to play even when you're on the top stage. It's
it
kind
is.
of,
It really
and
is.
it's all those. Yeah, boy,
All of that
boy,
stuff. Well, but
yeah,
no, but Bernard Johnson, the great designer who did the costumes, for
yeah.
Bubbling Brown. I
Wow.
mean, he's the one who, listen, like I said, it's unbelievable the people that have touched me and who have been a part of my journey. You know, um, Later on, he ended up doing for me and Germaine for the Rhythm Queens. He's the one who actually did what I call alterations for our costumes and made sure
Yeah.
we looked a certain way. And we would go
Mm.
to his house, and he would fix things. I mean, and these were legends. These people were absolutely legends, and and they were kind. I mean, you just enjoyed being around them, and they, like you said, tell stories. You would go. The first time I ever saw Fred Benjamin or his dance company, there was a lady's name, I can't call it right now, but when I went there, it was not in a it was in a studio performance. It wasn't in a theater. You know how
Mm-hmm.
they had those studio performances
Yeah,
where you
yeah,
go
yeah,
in
yeah.
and they perform and you sit in there and they have the little risers and you
Little
sit there.
risers, yeah. Sat on the floor if necessary.
Right. So all of that. But in the meantime, with all of that, I was really, really, really in just immersed in tap. And so by 79, um, right, by 79, I really, really was getting to a point where my feet I can say that's probably when my feet were lightning fast. And you know what I mean? When you've tapped, You know, there's a
Mm.
period in your time when your feet are so clean and so clear, you know, that, oh, it's just, you know, you feel like you can do anything, and they
No
sound,
stopping you.
no stopping you. And sure, and one afternoon, Miss Harris had me in her class, and she would make me do the exercise because Henry had a certain set of
I
exercises.
understand. Yeah, that's what I heard. I
He had,
never took from
okay,
him. It's a whole like a
right,
progressive
a
progression of.
progressive, right. Now I
Yeah, I used to
never
hear
knew
about that.
each exercise really was a progression of your ability. Okay.
Mm,
And I think there was something, I don't know how many, there's some other people who know what very well, because there was
yeah.
Samson and there was this and that. And people knew how good you were by if they said, which one of Henry's exercises do you
Right.
know? And if you said, I guess Samson or something, they know, oh, you know, you've already learned pullbacks. You already, you know,
Mm.
but I didn't learn on that level. But Eleanor Harris would make me would always say, she would do a certain set of exercises, and she said, okay, Debbie, demonstrate. I could demonstrate anything, you know, anything Henry had, I could do it.
Mm.
So sure enough, one afternoon, I was staying late like I never left class on time because I wanted to stay and work out. So one day she said in her little southern drawl, Debbie,
Tell
you
him.
know that you know that's Eleanor.
And real late at night. Just really,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. Go
Debbie,
ahead.
I I I wish you know, I can't give you no more. I wish, is Honey still living? So I looked at her and I'm going, who is Honey? You know,
Mm.
because who I think you need to see, Debbie, I'm not sure. But I ask around because you do, because there's no more I can give to you. You need to, and she get up and she having those leg warmers, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. Right. I can see the whole picture. You got it down, Delaware Harris.
So sure enough, she said, I'm gonna ask around and see if he's still living. I don't know where he is. But if honey, he needs to see you. Because I think that's where you need to be. So okay. So now fast forward, we're getting near 1980. It's 79.
Yeah,
And I
79. The big show happens.
I was I was dating a guy named Richard Barclift. It was an actual painter. He painted beautiful pictures of dancers. That's what he
Mhm,
liked to do. He would go from studio to studio. And I was dating him at the time. So we were supposed to go out on a date for New Year's Eve.
mhm.
So a couple of days before that, he came back. He would always know where to find me. I was always in the
In
studio
the
dancing.
studio.
So, so he came to the studio. We were supposed to go out that night or something. He said, well, I'll wait for you. So I said, well, it's going to be a little while. He said, yeah, I know, but I'll wait for you. So, he's waiting for me. So he obviously, and he was such a sweetheart, Hank. He was not aggravated. He might have been aggravated, but he said to me, he said, you know what? He said, you don't need to go with me. Where you need to go is to the Brooklyn Academy of Music and see these old guys. Okay. He said, that's where you need to go. So I said, who are you talking about? So
Mm,
he said, well, they're going to have a performance for New Year's Eve, a
mm.
New Year's Day, a New Year's Eve. He said, and you need to see them. He said, they're at the Brooklyn. I said, well, where is the Brooklyn Academy of Music?
Wow.
Because all I knew was Manhattan. Okay.
Hmm.
He said, well, it's not that far. He said, but forget our date. Don't worry about that. He said, I really think you need to go see them. So I said, oh my goodness. I said, well, okay. So I said, and he said, they are the best. He
Wise
said,
man.
he said, who you going to see are the best. He said, and that's who you
Wow.
need to see. He said, I said, well, I don't have any money to go to any concert. I said, but you know what I'd love to do is see them maybe in rehearsal. Because you and I both know if you really want to see an artist at work, check them out in rehearsal.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
when they get ready for the show, I mean, all that's, everything's in order. You know what I mean? We all in
Yeah.
costume and so forth. And I said, I'd love to see them working. He said, well, they're not going to perform till New Year's Day, I think it was. He said, but they're going to have a rehearsal before that. So I said, okay. So I we left. We didn't go out. I got in my little car and I said, okay, I'll find my that there was no GPS, nobody could help. There was the old-fashioned way of finding a place. You just ask somebody on the street, how do I get to Brooklyn? Okay, so I'm in my car and I'm on my way over to Brooklyn. I didn't realize how far it was. Okay. So I'm especially when you don't know where you're going. So
Right. Yeah.
I'm
Wow. Wow.
I drove when they told me about a bridge I had to go over. Okay.
A bridge.
But see, that old personality, I didn't care. I'm going to go see these people. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna take the bridge or whatever I have to take. So I get over there and I get it. I'm over there and they call it a BAM. People say, you looking for BAM? So I said, on the street, at the stoplight, I asked the guy, I said, where is BAM? So he said, you can't miss it. He said, you keep going, keep going. It's a big
Wow.
building on the corner. So that's what I did. Well, by the time I got there, Hank, it was so late that I said, I just didn't have it in me to turn around and go back home. Okay. And because
Wow.
they were going to be rehearsing the next day.
Mhm.
Because I always did a dry run of wherever I wanted to go. So that's what I did was this dry run call. I thought I was going to run over there and see
You
them come
thought this
back.
was just a dry run.
But when I got over there, I said, there's no way. I'm going to go back home. So you know what? It was late. I said, well, it's tomorrow morning. I'll just sit here. I'll just sit here. And that's what I did. I slept in my car that night on the street.
In
And I
Brooklyn.
right on the side of the building. And I
Wow.
said, okay, so I slept that night. This goes to show you when you're young,
Yeah.
you do crazy things. You know,
I know. You look back at it now, go, I did that
I
in
look back
Fort Greene in 1979. We ain't the Fort Greene now. You
now.
know.
I said, do you know how dangerous? So, but listen, I wanted to
Hey.
see these. Everybody
Yeah.
said,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I figured, what the hell? I'm in my car. I locked myself in. I
Yeah.
slept.
Yeah.
So I guess so. Sure enough, you don't sleep too deep because
Right.
you're
Right.
in your house. So so sure enough, I woke up at about 6, maybe 6 in the morning or so, and the men who collect the garbage were on the street,
Hmm.
and they opened the back of the building to take out the garbage. So that's the door was open, so I slipped on. So I slipped on in, and I'm feeling my way through. You in a concert hall. I was too dumb to even realize what it was. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm in a concert hall. I'm feeling my way, and I see this door open, and I go. It's the actual auditorium. Okay,
Hmm.
there's the stage, and there's the seats. So I thought, okay. I said, well, it's just 6 o'clock or so. I said, he said 11 o'clock they'd be here. I said, it ain't too long. So I figured, okay, so about in the middle of the orchestra, about the 6th row, I sat down and crossed my leg, and my shoes were in my purse. Okay. So I figured I'm gonna sit here until they come in. So I sat and I fell asleep. Okay. So sure enough, Hank, the when you're doing something wrong, anything will make you nervous. You're jumping around, because
Hmm.
you're not supposed to be in there in the first place. I'm scared somebody gonna come and ask me to leave or whatever.
Yeah.
So sure enough, the only thing that woke me up were these voices. They were laughing and they were talking, and it scared me. And of course they're on the stage with the work light,
Hmm.
okay, and the rest of the place is dark. So when I jumped up, my tap shoes hit the floor, making all this noise. And as soon as they hit the floor, this guy, tall, very tall man, comes to the edge of the stage and he says, who's out there? And I thought, oh my God, he looked like a giant, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I'm picking up my tap shoes. I said, it's just me. And in those days, they didn't bite their tongue how they talked. Okay, so anyway, he said, I'll say nicely, he said, who
Right.
is just me? Okay.
I can
Like what
imagine.
he said.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So he said, little girl, because naturally, even if you were 30 years old, these men are up in age. Anybody's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, poor little girl. He said, little girl, come up here. What are you doing? So he said, come up here on this stage. So I picked up my shoes, put them, stuffed them back down in my purse, and I went up on the stage. He said, what are you doing here? He looked and he said, what are you? I said, oh, I said, a friend of mine told me some old guys were going to be here. He said, oh, he did. He said, old guys. He said, well, you're looking at them. So he said, well, okay, old guys. He said, introduce yourselves to the little lady. He said, first of all, let me say, I am Honey Coles. That all of a sudden, the dots got connected. Okay, I said, honey, that's who Eleanor. He said, I'm Honey Coles. The next guy, he said, I'm Charles Cook. Just call me. The next one was Face Roberts.
Oh.
Then the next one said, I'm Buster Brown. And then the next one over there, he said, I am Fayard Nicholas.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine? To this day, I said, I had the truly the giants of the industry. I mean, these was like the,
Cream of the crop.
You couldn't get any better. Jimmy Sly was not there, but Louis Sims. He said, my name is Louis Sims. And then somebody in the back said, I'm Bubba Gaines. Okay, so they started dancing, and they were, and so they said, I was in awe. I didn't know what found. I said, I said, well, thank you. They said, well, you can stay. You don't have to leave. So I said, I said, excuse me, sir, what is your name again? Because Bubba was always soft spoken. He was never overtly aggressive with anything. And so I said, excuse me, but what did you say your name was? He was standing in the back. And he said, my name is Leslie. He said, but all my friends call me Bubba, Leslie Bubba Gaines. He said, so you can call me Bubba. He said, but what are you doing here? He said, why aren't you in school? He said, you got your little tap shoes with you. Why aren't you in dance school? I said, well, that's where I've been. I said, but I don't quite, I'm not being taught what I hear. So he said, really? He said, well, tell me what you hear. So I said, well, so I got kind of confused. So he said, can you sing it? I said, well, he said, I tell you what. He said, let me do this. So he did a paddle and roll or something, so many taps I've never heard before all come together. And I said, that's what I hear. He said, oh. He said, He said, well, I tell you what. He said, if you hear that, he said, I'm going to check your feet out. He said, where do you live? So I said, oh, I live a long way. I said, I live in Newark. He said, New Jersey? I said, yeah. So he said, well, hey, he said, I've been all over the world. Newark, New Jersey is just across the river. So he said that. He said, well, I'm going to come over. He said, I said, you'll come all the way to Newark? He said, sure I will. He said, I'm going to check out your feet. He said, but before I do that, I'm going to give you carte blanche. You come here tomorrow to the concert as my guest. I thought, oh, wow. I was in heaven. I thought, this is unbelievable. And on the bill was Dizzy Gillespie. I
remember that show. Yeah.
He took me backstage and he said, here's my newest friend, guys. This is a little different. He introduced me to everybody. He said, now, what's a good day for me? I said, well, we can do this right away. And let me tell you, where I was working out in Newark was in an abandoned building called the James White Community Center, which is where Alex Bradford had us rehearsing before he died. It was a fabulous building, it had a phenomenal stage, wood stage, okay? and I knew the floor was excellent. So I said, but I wasn't supposed to be in there after Alex died because they considered it condemned building in that
Dangerous
part of the
place.
ward of Newark. They were tearing those buildings down.
Mm-hmm.
But as usual, there were times during the evening when I knew that you could get in because they didn't close all the doors. The only problem, Hank, was that if you wanted to go in, you had to go in through the back door. You had to scale a fence. Okay, you had to scale this fence to get in. So I would go in there at night and work out on the stage and then scale the fence and go home. So when I brought Bubba, Bubba said he was coming over. So I said, okay. He said, you gonna take me where you work out? I said, all right. So
But there's this fence.
So I picked him up at Penn Station and I was excited. So he said, now where are we going? I said, we're going to go where I work out. I said, but first I have to tell you about the building. He said, well, what's wrong with the building? I said, well, nothing, but it's just that there's a fence in the back. Okay, that I said, well, I'll show you when we get there. So we get there, I park the car, we get out, we go to, so I said, Bubba, you have to climb, we have to go over this fence to get in the back door. He threw his dance bag over. He jumped over that fence, honey, without, as if, I said, oh, now you, and these up in age. So we got over the fence, we go in the back, and he had his dance bag with him. So we go in the back, and I said, there's no lights in here, Bubba, just the daylights from the windows. He says, okay. So I get up on the stage. He said, okay. He said, go up there and dance. So I pulled out every exercise I ever had with Henry. You know, I said, what I'm gonna do? And I'm dancing and dancing and dancing. He's walking around the room. He's got his hands in his pockets. You know, he was always a sharp dresser. So he's got on a suit coat. He's got his hat on. And he's whistling to himself and he's walking around the room and I'm up there sweating bullets doing all this dancing. So finally he said, okay, that's enough. So he said, you got 2 good feet. He said, your left is stronger than your right. So he said, but you got 2 good feet. He said, I know you think I'm not paying attention. He said, I didn't need to look at you. I just needed to hear you. So that's when he said, now I'm going to give you something. So that's when he reached down and he pulled out a jump rope.
Wow, right then, wow.
And he said, you know, that's when I learned the heartbreaking story about Hutch, because Hutch had a drug problem that I didn't know. Of course, a lot of people didn't know about. And he said, you know, they were ready to go on in Europe.
So just to clarify, Hutch was
James Hutch Hutchinson was the young man who originally did the jump rope, okay, of the 3 Dukes. See,
and that's the group that Bubba
was with. Yes,
yeah, right.
Bubba was
younger,
with.
Right.
This is when I learned all that myself. He said, you know, and this is why how he actually told me was a strange thing. He took the rope out and he said, can you do a time step? And I said, sure, you know. He said, okay. He said, you know how to jump rope? I said, yeah. He said, you know how boxers jump rope? They turn backwards. I said, yeah. He said, I want you to do your time step. And at the same time, I want you to jump the rope. So he gave it to me. So he said, do a break. So I did a little break. He said, and then he said, go on into it the best way you can. So I did a little break. And then when time was right, I jumped right in. And I just kept doing my time step. Well, he turned away from me. He took a few steps away. He came back. And he kind of, Bubba's eyes were kind of gray because when he was very young, because he was mixed really, because when he was very young, he looked almost white. Okay, so he had kind of greenish gray eyes, and they were kind of teary. And I thought I had offended him in some kind of way, so I got nervous. So I stopped, and he said, you know, I had a partner. That's when I learned this. He said, I had a partner whose name was James Hutchinson. We called him Hutch. He said, and I had another partner named Pie. He said, and the 3 of us were the aristocrats of dancing, but we were called the 3 Dukes. He said, Hutch was a phenomenal dancer. He said, he used to do this little jump rope like nobody I've ever seen in my life. He said he was out of this world. He said, and he was brown just like you. He said, because the other two are kind of fair. He said, but you know, he said he had a problem that he couldn't overcome. He said he had a problem with drugs. He said, and but he had a sense of humor that that was off the charts. He said, and he used to dance and all, and I would say, Hutch, don't do this, don't do that. And he said, oh, Bubba, you worry about things too much. He said, and don't worry. He said, no matter what you see me do, you're gonna see me do it again. He said he was that cocky and that confident. He said, and I loved him dearly. He said, but I had to identify Hutch when we got ready to go on one night and he didn't come out. He said, and in that dressing room, he said Hutch was laid right there. He had overdosed. He said, he said, I never felt that kind of pain ever. He said, but when I saw you with no cares, jumping and tap dancing in the rope, he said, Hutch was right. I saw him again. He said, but the little bastard didn't tell me it'd be a girl. Okay.
Wow.
So he said, I'm gonna tell you now. He said, I'm gonna show you how to like, sharpen this up. He said, but this will take you around the world. He said, it's gonna do for you what it did for me. He said, I guarantee you. So, that was our first meeting, you know what I mean? And to tell you the truth, when you're that young and excited, you don't think anything of it. When I look back on it today,
Now you look at it.
it was the most phenomenal thing. And I realize now just how special it was. And when I see Hutch, and because Bubba told, he said, nobody's ever done it. He said, anything like the way Hutch did it. Because I used to, when Bubba first gave it to me, I did it up tempo. I did 2 versions like he taught me. And there was a performance up in Harlem. I had a little white dress on and some little white tap shoes. And Bubba introduced me, and I did the rope, and the place exploded. To me, it was nothing, because he said when you have a gift, it doesn't feel you just doing what you do,
because you can do it, yeah.
But what made me feel good in my lifetime was not only did Bubba get to see me do the rope, but he was right. It took me around the world, especially with Cab and the Rhythm Queens, because even when Germaine and I performed and with the Rhythm Queens, we did a medley, and in the medley, I always did the jump rope. There was, and in the Cotton Club motion picture, that's the only thing that didn't get cut, didn't end up on the cutting room floor. And Francis Coppola, the director of I'll never forget, what a sweet man he was.
Really?
What you saw was he did 21 takes. I did 21 takes of the rope for the Cotton Club, but near the end, Mr. Coppola told me not to dance anymore because we were at Grand Central Station on concrete.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
And he said, I don't want you to dance. He said, I can edit you in now, so don't do anymore. And when we had the rap party, I couldn't go because my ankles were swollen and I couldn't walk. I couldn't walk very well. But not only did Bubba live to see the Cotton Club, he lived to see me in Black and Blue. And because Bubba did not die until 97. Okay. And because I spoke, Germaine and I both attended the funeral. I spoke there, and I've often wanted to go to his gravesite, which is in Calverton. He's buried in the Calverton National Cemetery in New York. And, but really, he used to take me into the studio, Faisal's. Whenever he didn't come back to Newark. He told me, since you're coming into New York,
did he turn you on to Faisal's? Was that the first?
He's the one. Yeah,
that's how you found out about it.
That's how. And from that point on, that was where, and that's where I met Brenda and Honey and all these people. But it didn't do it. But there are days when I say, "Do you realize, Deborah, you were talking to the cream of the crop?"
Yeah. The doors opened up. Sometimes these things happen. You're young, you just do it, and later you realize this is no incident. Something was guiding me, or something was saying, "This is where you're supposed to,"
Well, I've often said to people that
You know,
my journey in life is as it has been divinely directed. I
yeah,
said
you have to
because
be
you
grateful
don't
for it.
just all the stars fall when they all fall into place like that. You know, something very special, is happening.
Yeah.
So, he's the one that took me, and he would take me into the studio, and we would be there for hours, and
Mm,
he would be soaked, Hank, when
mm.
we would come out of there, and that's when he put his towel around his neck, and to put on his jacket and everything, and we would walk and take his dance bag. In fact, I have a towel to this day. It's huge that I still use that Bubba bought for
That was
me
it. Oh yeah.
very early in my career.
Wow.
He used to say, Never come out of a studio or off the stage without a good towel." And he
That's a
made
good,
uh-huh.
yeah.
And he gave that to me. He told me to make sure you have this. So, I have his original rope. One was with him when he was buried, but in his coffin, there was one his son put
Mm,
there. And I have the other one. And I have two pair of his shoes that I keep,
wow.
so they mean a lot. And even though, after years of I've had, back surgeries and hip
Hmm.
replacement and things where you can't be that aggressive anymore. But there are days when, it just, you can feel yourself and see yourself doing it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's really, really, but he was very, very unselfish, which is also something that um, today I don't see a lot in a lot of dancers. There are some who are,
Hmm.
but he was really, really unselfish in the sense that this is what even inspired me to create the company, because
Yeah,
we had
yeah.
this conversation. I was aware that these African American men, many of them have been taken advantage of, because Bubba told me stories that you would make you cringe,
Hmm.
because he served in the military,
Hmm.
segregated military.
Hmm.
He always told me in Nancy, France, the men would arrive there and only the white soldiers could stay in the hotel and take a bath. That the
Hmm.
black soldiers had to go another 25 miles to another town because they couldn't, all kind of stuff. When he got to New York, guys saw him downtown. And remember, I told you Bubba was very fair when he was
Hmm.
young. And the guy wanted Bubba to work in his act. He said, "Oh, you have two other guys?" He said, "Yeah." But when the guy saw the other two, he told Bubba, "Well, we can't take them because they were brown."
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
he said, "We can take you." Bubba said, it's either all three of us or none of
No,
us.
nothing. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so he said, so he had been through, all this racism and things that we talk
Mm.
about today. They lived it. That's why it's not new. They were living through it
Oh yeah,
then.
yeah, yeah,
It's not new. So and he used to even say things. He said, he was the one who would say to me, he said, "Show business is difficult." He said, no matter what happens, he said, "But remember this, no matter what happens, nobody can take your gift." He said, "They can cut you out, they can copy." He said, "But they can't take what's in you." He
You
said,
know, I was told the exact same thing by Hal Jackson, who was the first great black DJ when I was doing stuff, and he pulled me over and says, "They can never take your talent away."
"That's right.
And you need to hear that,
Yes, you do.
because the business is a trip,
It
you
is.
know,
It can be brutal. It can be
and there
brutal.
are casualties from this business,
I know.
because you don't
Yeah.
have the solid
Well, that's the other thing Bubba used to say to me too. At times, he said, "My only concern about you is that you are female." He said,
mm,
"And many times they take advantage of females in a
mm,
different way."
different way.
In a different way. But I told myself, "Don't worry about me, Bubba." I said, I feel like my mother.
I was about to say, talk to my mother. She'll pull your coat.
She'll tell you, "Don't worry
Yeah.
about this one. She'll be okay." But that's when he told me in the studio that day. I was aware of how these men had been treated. So I
Yeah,
said,
yeah, yeah.
"Bubba," I said, "we can't keep doing this." He said, "What's the problem?" I said, "Well, I can't pay you." I
Mm.
said, you're spending. I wasn't paying for the studio at Faye's. It wasn't free.
Yeah,
I said,
yes.
I can. I said, you're paying for something. You're paying for this. You're with me. We're talking about sometimes 4 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
hours.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he said, look, and Bubba was frank, like a lot of these guys. They didn't bite their tongue. He said, look, I don't want your money. He said, I'm not here with you because I want your money. He said, he said, but one day, he said, this is what I want you to know. One day, somebody's going to look at you the way you looked at us and looked at me about this art form. When you give that person all that I've given to you, you will have paid me in full.
He was investing in you and investing in
Oh, there you go.
the thing. That was it.
And that's why, Hank, to this day, when people
That's what it's
say,
about.
"Why you were?" I said, "I'm still paying. I'm still,
Yeah.
But it's a joy to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people ask me all the time, well, what did Bubba teach you? Bubba taught me more about life than he taught me about steps. He said, I can teach you 1,000 steps. He said, you'll get it because it's in you. He said, you got an internal metronome that I don't worry about. He said, one thing, he said, I saw that on the stage. He said, when you went to do that show one afternoon, he said, the drummer lost time. He said, I know he did. And those guys, timing for them, please, don't even think about it. He said, but I saw you look back at him because you knew he lost it. He said, but it didn't faze you, and you waited till he caught up to where you were. He said, when I saw that, I said, well, damn, she don't need to worry. I ain't gonna need to worry about her. So they see things in you, you know.
So maybe it's time to us to see a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little
that'd be nice.
A little bit of something. So the first thing I want to show is first of all, Hutch that you've been talking about doing the rope dance, and then the three Dukes.
Okay.
And again, it's Bubba.
Yes.
Hutch, and who's the third person?
Yeah, and his name was Arthur Pye Russell. Okay. They had these little nicknames because it was James Hutch Hutchinson, Leslie Bubba Gaines, and Arthur Pye Russell.
So as you see this clip, the first person you see dancing is Hutch. When the three people come out, Bubba is the one on camera left.
That's right.
Those of you keep an eye out on that, and
that's right.
You get a chance to see a young Bubba. We'll talk. We see a little bit of older Bubba.
Yeah.
And some of us can never look at this stuff too many times because it's nice stuff.
No.
Jenny, look, there's a good number. Look at Duke, how he's...
What is it, Germaine? Oh, we just come to help celebrate.
Good. Oh.
I love that. I love that.
I can watch it 100 times. And I still can't do some of those steps. I
just love the rhythm, you know.
I know. I know. This
you know, I love that. So, and it's funny. The first time I saw the clip, I recognized Bubba right away in terms of how he holds his body. You know, you see certain people. There's that he had this kind of thing. We just kind of like, you know,
that's
kinda,
him.
So, in 19, you know, some of these dancers formed the organization called the Copaesthetics, which were performing at BAM, and BAM is short for Brooklyn Academy of Music that Deborah's been talking about, and they started performing around it. So in 1988, we're fast forwarding now, 1988. They gave a concert at the LaGuardia Community College, and I videotaped it. I had this handheld camera, shot a lot of it. And the next thing I'll be showing is Bubba. This is now 1988. We're leaving from 1934 to 1988. First telling a joke, which I think we can hear. The audio isn't great, but you'll get it. And then you're going to see Bubba doing rope dance. And it's funny, you know, at the age, I remember back then thinking, man, these guys in the 70s can really move, you know. and now that I'm 27. Anyway, let's see.
And speaking of strength, please. I was fishing one day. Now there's a guy. He's sitting with an alarm clock in one hand and a hammer in the other. I said to him, I said, hey, buddy, what you doing? He said, I'm teaching. I said, you doing what? He said, I'm teaching. I said, well, how can you teach with an alarm clock in the hand? He said, you give me $2 and I'll show you. I said, all right. Here's $2 short. He said, first you take the alarm clock and you stick it down in the water. When the fish come up to see what time it is, you hit it. I said, well, how many fish did you catch that way? He said, you were the fifth one. I'll try another little flash. Yeah.
Ah, boy.
All right.
And also in that clip, you could see well was Charles Cookie Cook, Henry Face Roberts, Louis Sims, and I think you see a little bit of Buster in there
and
too.
Buster,
Other people that some of us, some of you have heard about. I've talked about them and more, but
that's right.
yeah, it was really. So before I know there's a little more to talk about, but just to stay on the rope dance theme, just to bring a little further up to date. My guest here also, I have a clip of her doing the rope dance. The audio's a little low, but you'll get it. And this is from every year. There's a big event in New York called Tap City. It's been going on over 20 years now, I think.
Yes.
And just about everybody's been in it. It's amazing that Tony's been able to do this thing. And this, I don't know what year this is from. Tap City, you know?
I'm not sure. I thought
yeah,
it was
2000. Anyway, I wasn't sure if it was on there. But anyway, here is Deborah. Make sure I get the right clip here. Such a
I
little
know how he felt. I know how he felt when he got out of it and finished it. It's like, whoo, you
And
can
it's fun.
exhale.
And you know, Deborah sent me that clip, and in the early part of this clip, evidently you had done 2 shows that day.
Yes,
So
yes.
you even talk about, I'm doing this again, you know,
Right.
doing this.
I know.
I
Yeah.
know, so much to talk about. But
Mm, mm.
one of the things Deborah made reference to a few things. So one is, which is a whole saga. You know, the Cotton Club was a place in Harlem, and the Cotton Club
Mm,
film was done years ago,
mm.
and then they had the encore version of it, and just about
Yeah.
everybody says, you know, there's just all this extra footage that just needs
Yes,
to
it
be a
is.
film, you know, in terms of
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, the show Black and Blue, and you're my third Hanging with Hank guest, who's a Black and Blue alumni. But what's interesting, a little bit, that one of the things I learned in the interview I did with Germaine Goodson,
Mm.
I was aware that the 2 of you had worked together, and I was
Yes.
always under the impression that the Rhythm Queens was the 2 of you and had always been the 2 of you. And
Mm.
in the interview with Germaine, she got into the whole thing about Henry Latang began it, and that it
That's
was a
right.
trio, and you know, the 3 of you, and then came a point where the 2 of you did wind up doing it quite a bit. But it's
That's
really
right.
interesting, the whole history of the 2 of you um,
Yes. Well,
as
because
Rhythm Queens. Go ahead.
that's right. Mm-hmm. Because there's been in my lifetime, there have been 3 sets. Okay.
Oh,
So
three
yeah,
sec. Wow.
right. Because the first set was in the Cotton Club. That's what the original set. Okay. And then there was then the second, which was Cavril Payne, Melissa Johnson, and myself. That was in the
Ah,
movie, which was
okay.
never seen. Okay. It ended up on the cutting room floor. Okay. That was the original.
Mm,
Then for Cotton Club on Parade and the tour, that's when it was Deborah, Germaine, and Rashmella combo. That was
mm,
the second set. So, and that was we were together through 91, which is when Black and Blue actually ended. Even though we didn't perform our number in Black and Blue on Broadway, we of course did it in Paris. And then
mm-hmm.
the third set of Woodland Queens has been me and Germaine. That's been the longest, 38 years. We've been together for a long, long time.
And
So
you toured a lot of places with
the
that,
two,
yeah.
yeah, this is my sister. You know, she's not just my dance partner. I consider her a
Mm.
sister. We've been through so much. We call it thick and thin together. You know, because we've seen it all. We've had each
Yeah.
other's back. We've toured. You know, we've had life together. You know, so it's really been precious. But you know, through it all, you know, it's been what a journey with this group. You know,
And I
so it
always enjoyed watching the both of you dance. I mean, it's nice seeing duos and stuff in terms of
yes.
combinations and how you kind of complement each other.
Oh
Interesting
yes,
in the
yes.
energies you have and how you do. This was like
Yeah, and what's so nice, you know, because I always what I admired most about Germaine, not only being just such a loving sister, but her background. She's a well-trained artist, dance artist. I mean,
mm,
she had training that I never had. You know, there were things that she would teach me. You know, coming from such a rich background. You know, of all kind of dance for Germaine. Mine is I'm truly a specialist in tap, but
mm,
that's not true of her. So she would share with me, you know, things, you know,
mm,
to help me, you know, with carriage and different things, you know, that I would never even think of because it wasn't, I didn't come from formal training the way she did
mm.
all her life. But we complement one another so well. We're so different, but you know, you see that compliment to what you're seeing, you know, and the
Yeah.
audiences see it, you know, so we've loved being together. You know, it's been a wonderful. experience for the two of us, and on and off the stage. You know what I mean? So it's some people are only together, only on stage, but our lives have become, family. So that's what you see.
Well, in terms of seeing complementing energy, maybe we should let everybody see
Yeah, that's right.
it. Everybody see it. So it might have been from the same Tap City show.
I think that's a different one. I think
Okay,
this is a different one.
yeah,
Probably.
maybe it's a different
Yeah.
one. So
Mhm.
so anyway, here are the Rhythm Queen, circa 2000, whatever it was that it
Right.
happened.
Right.
Tap your troubles away. You bounce the big check. Your mom has the vapors. Tap your troubles away. Your car had a wreck. They're serving you papers. When you're the one that it always rains on, simply try putting your K360s on. Your boss just gave me axe. There's years of back tax you simply can't pay. If a sky full of crap always lands in your lap, make a curtsy and tap your troubles away.
Right.
So nice, so
I
nice.
know. And you notice the cord from the microphone. I just let it go. I said, no problem. Just keep moving.
That's the thing about true professional. You just work it, cause swing around, you find a way to do
Just
it.
let it go. If you don't pay attention to it, they won't either. Okay, just keep going.
And it becomes part of the thing. It's we all of us can talk about happy accidents in performance.
I know.
And something goes wrong, and then you work it, and what happens is the audience really gets into it.
Listen, when I
and if you let it get in the way, then but when you just
right.
kind of like, there it is.
I'll never forget when I did Black and Blue. Kevin Ramsey was my partner at the time, and there was a lift that had to happen, and we did the lift. It was lift for, and of course your legs go out, and my shoe came off when he lifted me. The shoe flying up in the air, my shoe came off, and I kept on dancing with one shoe. The audience loved it. They were applauding, but you don't. That's professionals do that. We all know that's live theater.
That's what's great about live theater, So
yeah, you do it. Nobody's gonna say take one, take two. No.
Yeah, this is it. This is take. So before I get into just the whole New Jersey Tap Ensemble, maybe have a few images that we can just go through and you can talk about, because it can trigger off a lot of different things. So we start off with this person.
There she is. That's before the shoes were thrown into the closet.
Wow.
Yeah, that's 7. That's oh my Lord, 7 years old there. Yes, that's the baby
Yeah.
picture.
Baby pictures.
Les Peretz, I think that's the name of the school. That's 100 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, a while ago.
Uh-huh. The photographer told my mother he had no problem with me in the camera. I loved it.
Yeah, so let me see.
No shyness there.
Yeah, so I'm trying to click it. Oh, let me see. Trying to make it. Let's try this. Wait a minute.
Little pearls on.
Oops. And
Oh yeah, that's early years in the company. Yeah, one of my first body shots.
yeah.
That's me with Caverill Payne. Right before Cotton Club on Parade, Caverill, who was one of the rhythm queens originally from the movie, who was actually a wonderful vocalist and the sister of Cecil Payne, a great musician. She had a wonderful voice, sounded a little bit visions of Ella Fitzgerald in her voice, but she was working in the Catskills, at Grossingers and the Concord. So she took me with her a couple of weekends so that I could work because this is before Henry put the 3 of us, before he put Rashmella, Germaine, and myself together. So I went up there with her and she would bring me out just to do a tap number with her.
That's nice. Wow.
And of course, this is me and this is the original Paris ensemble of ladies in black and blue. This is so that's Germaine on the far left. I'm next to her. And then next to me is Valerie Macklin. And then there's Tanya Gibson. And then you cannot see, she's hidden a bit on Tanya's shoulder, but that's Kime Hersey. And then there's Diane Walker. And then there's Rashmella Cumbo. Now, Germaine and I, we did have a number that we did in Paris together, the 3 of us. But that's the original ensemble of the ladies.
I'm waiting for the documentary about that show because Black and Blue, so many stories connected to that. So and this photo. We are,
that's Germaine, Rashmella in the center, and I'm on the right.
And this is a incarnation of Rhythm Queens here, right?
This is the Rhythm Queens, that's right. This is the 3 of us. When we were performing, we did a lot together. This was a Cotton Club on Parade as well as London. We were everywhere. And Bernard is the one who was responsible for these costumes because we did so much with our arms. He made sure they would look like birds, it was beautiful. They were beautiful. We had this costume in both ecru, like a beige color, and fuchsia. The other one was fuchsia, a pink, a kind of a pink. And this is the 2 of us after Black and Blue in New York closed in 91. Then we went, the 2 of us, and Rashmella had other aspirations in film and so forth. So we wished her well and decided that we would stay together. And Cab said he would, he welcomed us as 2.
So that's Cab
Calloway.
Cab Calloway, yeah, okay. Speaking of?
Yes, speaking of Cab, there we are with him.
Heidi ho.
We're at Trump Plaza. Yeah.
Wow.
He was a great guy. He did so much for us. And this was when I received, what was this? This was the
Is it Flaubert? Yeah, it must be because that's Carl Schlesinger. Yeah.
That's right. And
just so people know, every year it's this big show, tap extravaganza and awards are given out called the Flaubert for Florence Mills and Bert Williams and And
that's 2007. And that's Bob Audi.
Audi, yeah.
And that's, of course, Yvette Glover.
So Bob Audi was a tap teacher around for a long time. And,
yes.
And Yvette Glover, in addition to being Savion's mom, was a great singer and also a great supporter of the art form.
Oh, great!
Very, very great presence.
And that's the picture of me in the Cotton Club motion picture doing the rope. And this was actually a rehearsal outtake. And to this day, I don't know the photographer because it was a guy in a crew. someone in the crew took the picture and left it by my dressing room table. And I said, gee, this is beautiful. And that's the only one that I have, believe it or not, you know, from the movie with me, because Francis Coppola did a scene they rebuilt the set for the Cotton Club, you know, in Astoria Studios. It looked just exactly like the authentic Cotton Club. But I did the jump rope both at the Cotton Club and at Grand Central Station. So in the movie, you see a really quick clip of this, but you see more of me from behind in the film at the end, right before the credits and everything. But yeah.
Yeah, I remember like those who know me that I had kind of like two tap mentors, Tony White and then Charles Cookie Cook, who I met at Clark Center during the same period of time. And I remember when the film was being done, the Cookie was telling me it was uncanny, evidently, how well they reproduced the Cotton Club set. You know, the people that really, you know, was done well. So you know, I think about the first time I knew people, so I was aware of you years ago, and we kind of got to know each other because of Bloomfield College, and you asked me to work on something. But my earliest memories of the company, New Jersey Tap Ensemble, and you can help me out with this, I remember going to see a performance in the basement of a church in Newark, New Jersey, and if memory serves correct, wasn't it part of a celebration for Savion, like a Savion Day or something?
Yes, it was. Yes.
Because I remember, I don't think I made it to all the daytime stuff, and then I found this the church somehow in the basement.
Yes, on the corner. Yes, there was a huge church, and I can't write down.
Yeah.
Oh, this is very early. This had to be probably 94. You know, because the company was founded in 94. But I'm trying to remember. It was something, and I had a poster. He was doing Tap Dance Kid. And so there was Newark being a native son. They were doing some kind of special tribute to him. So his mother, Yvette, asked us she said she wanted the company to be there. And she said, and I want the Rhythm Queens, because Germaine and I performed that day too. So we had, and Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis came.
Really?
They were part of the dignitaries that came to honor him on that day. The church auditorium had not been completed. They were still under construction.
Yeah, but it was kind of funky down there.
Yeah, it really was. So we had to makeshift the curtain for the stage, everything, you know, but we all came out for him, and Savion signed the poster for all of us. And I know it's somewhere in this house, I'm not sure, but it was a great day. And he, of course, he performed, and all these dignitaries came, and but see, my first recollection of you was when I needed someone to edit a tape for the company. And then they said, there's a gentleman at Bloomfield College who can do that for you.
And their office, I was teaching at Bloomfield College, and your office was like 2 blocks away from the college, right? It was like right down the road.
Franklin. 340 Franklin Street. And
Westminster Hall or whatever was like a block and a half away.
Block and a half away. And they told me, they said, well, I said, you know, I really need somebody to help me. And they said, go over to Bloomfield College and, you know, and ask for Hank Smith. And that's when we met. And you took all this time with me, you know, because I felt, because most people, you said, well, you know, you make an appointment. You said, no, come on over, bring what you got, and we'll look at it. And I said, oh, wow. I said, he showed me everything. And I remember you had to edit this tape for us. We needed it for some kind of promotion or whatever. But that was
I think that's how we actually met. I mean, I knew of you obviously at that point because I was
But
that's how our connection began in terms of the real kind of thing. So New Jersey Tap. So the company was already existence when you did the Savion Day thing. Is that?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Was that the first? Because I remember. I think Lon Chaney was there because he gave me a lift back from the performance. That I think
Well,
Ron
he was.
Chaney,
We had, like I said, we had a number
a number of people.
special guests there
Yeah, yeah, a lot of.
and that
So
was
what?
one of our early performances. Yeah.
So the beginning of that company, like what was the, and
Well,
this speaking of legacy, I mean, we could spend another 5 hours just talking about New Jersey
what,
Tap Ensemble in terms of
uh,
games. But
listen.
what was the spark that made you go,
Well, what
of the
really?
many things I'm going to do this, to Deborah, I'm going to do this.
Well, I
Deborah,
remember.
Deborah, I'm going to do this, Mitchell.
Well, to be honest, I mentioned to Germaine, I'll never forget. I said, Bubba gave me so much, and I knew rhythm tap are the lineage of the African American contribution. None of that was being taught in the schools. I knew
Mm,
that, and I said I'd like for young dancers to know really all about this art form, and maybe I can start a company. Not in my wildest dreams that I think I was starting any kind of business or something that needed
wow,
money. I just figured we
wow.
could just come together and dance. So okay.
Have a good time, just come together, hang out every now and then.
Find a place to dance and we'll be off and running. So I did not realize that, but so I actually sent out, what do you call it? I made a little flyer saying,
Yeah.
I was going to audition for a tap company called New Jersey Tap Ensemble. And it wasn't tap dance. It was New Jersey Tap Ensemble. Okay. And I was looking for I was really looking for adult dancers. I was not looking for children because I was thinking about the dancer who, had maybe a career and wanted to continue to perform and
Hmm.
learn. But, as you get older, there's no more, unless you're in a Broadway show or something, there's no
What are the
place for you.
opportunities? What are the
Right.
opportunities?
So I figured if I could start a company and train them, to really, really in that part of the culture, that's what I wanted to do. So I put this flyer out, and lo and behold, New Jersey had the biggest snowstorm ever the day before the audition,
Really?
and I mean, we talking about the governor closed the state. It was that bad. So nobody could go anywhere. But I said, we have no audition tomorrow.
We got to do this thing.
So, me. I said, oh, no, no, no. We're having, so my husband said, what are you going to do? I said, have the audition. I said, we're going to have it. And we had it at a school in Montclair on the corner called not Gallman, James. I can't recall the name of the place, but it was on the
Hmm.
corner, and that's what Premier Dance Theater, Premier, I think it was. Anyway, James Wiggins. Do you ever remember a man named James Wiggins? James Wiggins had was teaching modern dance or something. But anyway, he allowed us to have our audition in his space. It was upstairs, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, people came to the audition. They were lined up. And I learned from the very first person who auditioned for me was a man named Jason Janis. And
He was the first. Wow, Jason. Wow.
he was first. Now, there's only one person in the company who did not audition, who has been with me since day one, and that's Maurice Chestnut, because he was in an acting class with theater workshop, Peppermint Players in Newark, and he was one of the children there who was being unruly, and the director, Marie Thomas, dear friend of mine, said to whisper to me, do something with him.
Mm.
And I asked him, would he want to come with me and tap dance? And Maurice, like he always does, he says, okay, but he's phenomenal today. But he did not have to audition because he came kind of with me when I told him what I was trying to do. But we had Jason Janis, a young man. All of these were kids. They're men and young women now. There was Cab Calloway Williams, who was last, and who was a newlywed. And there was Paris Mann, and there was Nicholas DiNicolangelo, a whole bunch of Liz Glover. Oh, the names go on and on and on. But what happened was more children came than adults. So I didn't want to turn them away because, I said, they want to learn. I'll just teach them. So that's when the original company, came. This goes back because our first concert was Top Hat and Tails. I still have the original ticket. Okay, 1995 at the Mary Birch Theater. Okay, Mary Birch Theater is at Essex County College. Okay, and that's where we had, and it was a New Jersey Tap Ensemble. The ticket was $15, $10 for seniors, and we had a full house. And the band was led by many of the members of the Black and Blue Orchestra, and led by J. Leonard Oxley. So and it was a fabulous concert. That's something I don't think you have. I have footage from them that you just wouldn't believe. But that was our first concert, Top Hat and Tails. And as they say, the rest is history. We kept going from there, and we're now 28 years old.
I was just about to ask how many, because what you did at Kane University was at the 25th
That was the 20th. That was before Leonard died. That was the 20th anniversary, right? Because Leonard passed away on I always know that's my husband's birthday is February 19th. So I think it'll be 3 years now, this February 19th. But he was with, and of course, Leonard was instrumental with me with the company because Black and Blue closed. And I did not want, I wanted the tap dancers to work with live musicians. And I asked Leonard, would he help me? Because these were young dancers who everybody was dancing with recorded music. They didn't know anything about dancing with a band or anything. Yeah. And I asked him, I said, I want them to start from day one, to know what it means to set a tempo, to, know how to come in, to all that. Yeah. So Leonard, bless his heart, he was, from day one, he never asked for payment. He said, in fact, he said, what do you want me to do, Debbie? I said, I want you to help me teach these young artists how to tap. And he stayed with me until he passed away. So that's like I said, he was with me for a good 22 years. So so the early stage of the company were I had a large youth company because the youth company was a lot of them came. The oldest dancers that I had there, you only had about 3 or 4 that were actually adults. The rest of them were children. So the company grew up with us. And so you ended up, by the time, in 10 years, those children were the adults, and moving on. So it's been a real labor, but we have performed everywhere, and we've had, it's been a labor of love, because having a dance company, and also you got to remember that tap dancing was just making its sort of what people call a comeback. It was a Renaissance time, because until, people like Gregory Hines, in Sophisticated Ladies and all of that, and of course Henry with Yubi and all those shows were like precursors to tap getting visibility again. It never went away.
Yeah, it never went away. It just needed.
I tell people it never went away. It's just that no one was giving it any. It didn't have visibility in this country. It didn't have the visibility until some of those shows, and then of course after we finished with you have Jelly's Last Jam, you got Black and Blue, then you had Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Funk, which
really galvanized,
really pushed it into the forefront, and kids really became inspired and wanted to to do that, that kind of thing. So it really was a labor of love. But I think of all the young people who I would bring people. I'll never forget, one of our best programs was called the Touring Tap Boot Camp. That was a program I had where we went out and brought the masters of the art form to New Jersey. And then we toured to different counties. So like that's when I went to get Brenda and Tony and Jason Samuels, who was a kid, who was maybe 12, 13 years old, but they were up and coming, so I would get them because kids didn't know any of these people, you know, but they all came over. They were very good. They came over to Jersey, and we would go to one county after another, and you know, and really spread and promote the art forms. So, you know, we those are people that, because I see them I see them now. Derek Grant, Dormisha, all of them when they were really just starting out, so to speak. But they were so brilliant with their talent that I recognized it. So I went and got them, or told them how to get to me, or how to get over here. And so our early programs, of course, Germaine always came. Anything I was doing, she supported. But you know, anything, you know, they were all part of the history of the company. That's how they know.
I mean, your company is such an important element in the whole history of the dance and stuff. And you know, it's not an easy. I'm not telling you anything new. It's not easy maintaining a company.
Oh, it was difficult.
You know,
it was.
You know, I mean, it's really to keep it going and have it visible and pay and whatever, and find locations and stuff.
Well, even having, I have to give. I have this is where I'm fortunate. I have a partner. I have my husband. When we first started, I tell people, you know, everything that we had, he paid for rehearsal space, for costumes, for everything, you know, because he believed in me and he knew that I believed in what I was doing. But like you say, finding space, we were trying to find a space. We ended up, believe it or not, the first real authentic space we had for almost 10 years was Newark Symphony Hall. And it was a beautiful studio on the second floor that was really where ballet dancers used to train. So they had Marley, but in the basement of the hall was masonite. And my husband and his brother literally brought planks of masonite to the studio and on their knees put it down so that we would have a place to dance. Because even trying to find a place for tap dancers, nobody, you know, people didn't care. That I wanted wood. And if I couldn't get wood, masonite was the closest I could get. So, but I'll never forget him and his brother on their knees putting masonite down for us, you know, and like you say, and I used to, Robert Johnson laughed. I was telling him one day, I said, I dyed gloves on my kitchen stove. You know, I was dyeing gloves, you know, and you know,
that's, and you know, yeah, it's one of the things I think about too lately, you know, all the different awards given out, which are really important, but I also sometimes think, you know, the success of so many people are due to other folks who are not performers, who are not in the forefront. Sometimes it's the parents, sometimes it's the friend, whatever, they come in to give you that little extra whatever. No, you don't have to pay me or whatever. And like those people need the kudos because, you know, none of this is done alone, you know, and sometimes you just need that.
Impossible.
The grunts thing, the person, okay, well, I got a van, throw it in mine. Okay, I'll take it there, you know.
But that's why I tell people, I say, you know, without Ken, you know, I didn't know, Hank, when I started what I was doing, that I was really starting a business. It was actually a business. Like I said, being naive, I love to dance. I thought, well, other people must love to do this too. I want to teach. I want to bring them all together. But no, it didn't dawn on me. Well, where are they going to work? How are you going to get them there? Where are they going to perform? How do you tell people about it? I didn't know. I wasn't what do you call it? Experienced to know that you need marketing. Today, I know we do marketing. You have to market. You have to. I didn't know any. All I knew was that, okay, we all love this. We're good at it. I'm going to make them the best there is. But, you know, how do you keep them going? Then how do you pay for the space? Nobody's going to give it to you for free. Maybe a basement, a church basement might let you, but you need some place that all you can bring. Okay, so how are you going to do that? So, you know, like I said, if it hadn't been for, I tell them all the time, I said, the costumes, I'll never forget. I used to go, now you want to hear something funny. This is really funny. The two of us, Ken and I, went to New York. I knew that I wanted them dressed. I wanted them to look very, I wanted them to have that throwback look, that real sophistication, the top, the tails, all that. So I'm wondering, well, now, who's going to make these clothes for these people? So we went over to New York, and Bernard Johnson told me, being a costume designer himself, told me where to go, where they keep the costumes from Broadway shows. So I thought, oh, that'll be great. So Ken and I, we drive over, and we get to this place, and they had I knew I wanted the ladies in kind of a little jumpsuit, and they had jumpsuits from Anything Goes, from the big Broadway show. And I thought, oh, isn't that beautiful? So the people there didn't know who I was. I just told them I was the director of a dance company. So they figured, okay. So they take me back to see these costumes. They're beautiful. And so I said, oh, I like that one. So she says, well, that's $1,800. So I thought, well, for how many? She said, for that one. So I said, oh, okay. So I knew then I could feel the perspiration coming. So they took me around, and I said, I like that. So they said, well, what do you want to do? How many would you like for us to? So I said, well, you know what? I have to talk first to my money people. Now, the only money people in that room was me and him. Okay. I said, I have to talk to my money people, and then I'll get back to you. So I said, but you don't mind if so I made a sketch of the outfit. And so when Ken and I got in the car, we hollered. I said, $1,800. I said, we don't have that kind of money. I said, but you know what? My mother made my clothes as a little girl. So I knew. She used to always say, the cost of any garment is mostly in the fabric. She used to say, you can make anything, but what's going to make a garment have longevity or real beauty is the fabric. Okay. So I said, okay. So I said, you know what I'm going to do? So I made a little drawing of the little jumpsuit, and I went to like a little fabric store in Newark, and I looked at I knew my mother used to call it a silk chamoose. It was kind of fabric that was very soft to the touch. So this woman, she said, well, that's $20 a yard, blah, blah, blah. But to make a long story short, I took the idea from Anything Goes and the things that I saw, and I looked up a young woman in Roselle. It was a young Black woman who did designs. And I took this design to her and asked her if she could help me make, I needed about 12. Now, $1,800 for one in New York covered all of them in Jersey, okay? Everything you do it almost. So I learned, but I didn't know, like I said, but there were people who were willing to help when they found out what I was trying to do, even to costume them, and Leonard and the band, believe me when I tell you, if these people came from the Black and Blue Orchestra, what caliber musician.
That was top. That was,
okay.
Grady Tate and all these different people.
They played. They were the musicians in my first first concert. So you know what? We're not talking. So I'm saying we're talking about I couldn't afford it today.
Yeah.
These were top shelf. And Leonard, not only that, every number in the show he arranged for me. He didn't ask for a dime. He arranged my music. He did. That's why I say, that's why when people ask me to do certain things, I know what it means when you say, I'll help you, because I couldn't have gotten to first base without all the help that was given to me, and people were happy to see, but we worked hard. You know what I mean? It was never a time when, it was, and we did little jobs, and I'm gonna tell you something, my biggest, what would you call it? Obstacle was the art form's image. Because I had to prove to present.
Oh, the art forms. Okay, yeah. Tap, you mean? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's. Yeah.
I knew the company was as good, if not better, than so many of these small companies that were maybe. There's nothing wrong with lyrical and with modern and all that,
yeah.
but they would not open that door. Oh, tap. Oh, that's cute. I said, what you're going to see is not cute. It's skillful. And it's an art form that deserves respect. I had people come to me and ask me to dance for them on carpet.
Yeah,
And when I would go to studios, I would ask them which studio had the wood floor. Oh, we don't need wood floor. I said, yes, we do. You know, I had to fight the image of the art form. And then and I'll never forget, even with young African Americans back in 1970, in the early 90s, or say late 80s, who would say, you know, oh, we don't do that anymore. You know, we can do pirouettes and all that, but tap that, it was as if it was with such disdain. You know what I mean? And I would say, you know what? So I'm fighting an uphill battle, you know, and it took things like noise funk and sophisticated and Jelly's Jam and it took those kinds of shows to put us in a place where people started, and I didn't say started to respect. Okay. And then there were so many times presenters would say, well, we'll bring in the company with another company. I said, well, we don't need another company with us, just us.
We'll draw.
Afraid we weren't going to be a draw.
Yeah.
And I always heard, and which I'm very proud of, Hank, after every performance we did in Jersey, people would say, I did not expect what I saw, because they saw what I saw at the Brooklyn Academy of Music, the roots of the art form. They saw the real deal. Okay. And they said, my God, you know, I thought I was coming to see, they didn't know how to say it, you know. Fine. I said, well, what did you think you were going to see? Well, kids tapping. Kids tapping.
A cute little recital. Yeah,
a cute little recital. And they said, oh my God, these people. But even, and some of that I'm still fighting. But I have to say, but we've come a long way. We've come a long way, you know. But
well, here's, you can look at some of the members of New Jersey Tap Ensemble.
Yeah.
Just some images that we're talking, so people get an idea of.
Yes, we have some artists who are extraordinary. There's Cab Calloway Williams, who was the first African American female in river dance.
Yeah.
And was my first dance captain.
And she's I was on some Zoom thing last year. She's got a ton of memorabilia in her place. She's got a lot of taps.
It's like a museum.
She's got like a museum, you know.
Like a museum. That's
got some of Chuck Green's clothing and stuff.
Yeah, and she's been with the company since the day of audition. She's never left the company and always been generous to it, and is one of the brightest stars out there. So I'm proud to say that she has roots with New Jersey Tap Ensemble. Yeah. So and has stuck with us through, as I say, thick and thin also. No matter what we're doing, she's learned. I will never forget, we were doing a show at Count Basie, and I really needed her. And she flew back using her own money just to be with us for a weekend at Count Basie. You know, and didn't even want to be reimbursed for airfare. When do you hear that? And this is, of course, Maurice Chestnut, who today,
he was the unruly youngster that needed to be corralled.
This is right. This is the youngster who was 9, who today is, one of the finest artists, I say, on the planet. And if you have an opportunity to learn from him, you truly are learning from the best. He's got it going on. This is Katrina Richter, who is the founder of the Lady Hoofers in Philadelphia. And
I was not familiar with her.
And Katrina, this is one of those artists, I'm telling you, who was always on her game. If anybody in rehearsal, if at the last minute, if somebody got sick, Katrina was one of those dancers who knew everybody's work. So she said, and she was quiet, and she said, "Oh, I can stand in that spot, Miss Mitchell." Wow. And she could do it and did it, so
gotta look out for those quiet people.
That's right. And this is Nicholas Di Nicolangelo, who has Syncopate and has done some marvelous
That's the name
work.
Of a company of his?
Syncopate? That's right. Syncopate was one of his. Yes, he's got other wonderful credits going for himself, but just like I said, they've stayed with, and he branched out on his own. And of course, and I don't have an updated picture, but this is Jason Janis, who was the first dancer.
When I first saw this picture, I went, "Wait a minute, is that? Wow, are you young, Jason?"
This is when he was 14, And
I've always loved the kind of rhythms he gets when he dances. It's the
Listen,
thing he does.
listen,
Yeah, Jason Janis.
yes, and today is the proud father and husband.
Oh, he's a dad?
today.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
I haven't
with
seen him in a
Jersey.
little while. All right.
Yes,
Wow.
yes. I didn't get a chance to send you his updated stuff, but
So this is good.
always promoting the art form. Well, he eats, sleeps, and all that. This is Evan, who came to me at 13, and Ruggiero, who's on the cover of Dance Magazine, not too far back, who is out there doing his thing. He's all kinds of awards. Lost his leg to cancer, but it didn't make any difference to him in the sense that he said, "Miss Mitchell, you taught me about peg leg baits."
Yeah.
And he said, "So I know that I can continue a career," and continue. He has. He's done a marvelous job. And of course, this is the wonderful late J. Leonard Oxley, who was, who played with Ain't Misbehaving of the original tour, and has the great Broadway conductor and arranger, who the company would not have been the same without him. And this is Paris Mann, who was also only 13 or 14 when he auditioned, and is in California now with his wife and their dance school. So all these people have branched out. They are promoting the art form. And of course, this is DeWitt Fleming Jr.
He's hot now, boy, DeWitt.
Yes, and DeWitt, and DeWitt, and we'll come back and do for New Jersey Tap with Just an Ask. He is such a gentleman and a wonderful artist. So I follow him all the time. I'm always trying to keep up with him. He's so busy doing so many things. He too is a now father and a husband. So I'm proud of, there's so many people that have roots in the company that it's hard for me to even keep up with all of them. You know what I mean? But they come back and it makes me feel good. And they'll say, "Oh, Miss Mitchell, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't what you gave me or you taught me." And that's what I call success. When you've given wings to other people, I tell people all the time, I said that the real success is when you see them out there on their own and they're still promoting and they're doing wonderful things, New Jersey Tap, unlike some companies, it makes me feel good to see people go out there and spread their wings and fly, because you're never going to go wrong with that. These are people who come back to the company, they give back, they teach
it's like
students.
a circle,
Yeah, they do. It's a true circle, and they call me up and say, "What do you need?" People like Karen, Paris, DeWitt, they'll simply say, "What do you need, Jason?" He says, "I want you." What? That's all they say. "What do you need? What do you want me to do?" And you can't beat that. And then I got my dance partner, Germaine, who's constantly, helping me to stay on top of things because, naturally being a sister like she is, she knows the times, when you have surgeries, when you have, life happens, but she's there when life happens and says, you'll be fine. You just take one step at a time, like you've always done.
As we wind this up, and then there's the future, like the Foreman brothers, right?
That's right. Here you go.
Just to end this up, and I was loving that show, The Marvelous Miss Maisel, whatever.
Maisel, that's right.
And I said, wait a minute, who are those guys? It just so that's it's right. So Bubba invested in you.
Yes,
and this was paying off. I mean, this story of what you've done, and just I'm just happy to be able to hang with me for this, because it's like, and Dick, there could be a part 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Listen, the company alone. I'm telling you.
This is the legacy of what you've done, and
Yeah.
But thank you for doing this, because
Well, I appreciate, but
this
like
is
I said,
this
but
is
see,
enjoyable.
here you are, who tells your story? How does it get out there
Yeah,
without individuals like yourself who are saying, I want to talk to you, tell me your story. This is how we continue to
yeah.
live, and I tell everybody, you cannot do anything by yourself. You must have a support,
And
you
and
know.
and the other thing is too, one of the inspirations for doing this in the way I do it, as you were talking about earlier, hanging out with Bubba and walking, we not only learned from these men and women of another generation about tap, but we
Mhm.
hung out with them. I
We
used to
were in
talk
the
about
room.
the hang, like after Faisal's going down to Rendezvous to eat, or after Buster's
That's right.
Jam, the whole thing of Westway, and that was another aspect of the story, and how we
Hmm.
got to know them, and then how we embody in ourselves this also social, this other kind of thing, which then
Hmm.
is seen on the stage. There's
Exactly.
something this the people connect, and that's this.
Exactly.
So anyway, I just have to thank you again for this,
Thank
and
you for having me. It's been such a blessing. It really
I
has.
look forward to seeing you actually in person,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yes,
I,
yes,
I want to
yeah. And
thank
I'm
you
back
all.
teaching again. I'm teaching, something, get myself ready for a performance.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
when you think you have no more to give, you'd be surprised. You pull it all up. You're ready
Oh
to
yeah, oh
go.
yeah, yeah. There's more to go. So anyway, those of you watching, hope you got something out of it, and
Yes.
hang in there, do what you got to do. And as I end each show,
Thank
as
you.
an old guy from the '60s, peace.
Oh, please. Thank you, Hank. It's been a blessing. Bye bye.